That night was colder than usual, and the sound of the rain hitting the tin roof made the small wooden house feel even smaller. Inside, a young woman named Tia sat near the flickering stove, holding a worn blanket around her shoulders. Her little brother, just 10 years old, was asleep on the couch, wrapped in an old sheet that barely covered his feet. She had worked a long shift at the diner that day, and her body ached, but her mind refused to rest. Bills were stacked on the table, and she knew that by the end of the week, she'd have to decide which one to pay first, rent or electricity. She took a deep breath and closed her eyes, trying not to think about it. The storm outside grew stronger. Suddenly, she heard a faint knock at the door. It was soft at first, like someone unsure whether to bother her. Tia froze. It was almost midnight. No one ever came to visit this late, especially in weather like this. For a second, she thought she had imagined it. But then the knock came again, a little louder this time. She hesitated, then slowly stood up. Her heart beat faster. Her neighborhood wasn't dangerous, but it wasn't safe either. She quietly walked to the door, her bare feet making no sound on the wooden floor. "Who's there?" She called, her voice shaking a little. A man's voice answered, calm but tired. "I'm sorry to bother you, miss. My car broke down a mile back. My little girl and I have been walking in the rain. We just need a place to stay for the night." Tia frowned. She wasn't sure what to do. She peeked through the small window beside the door and saw a man standing there, completely soaked, holding the hand of a little girl who looked about 7. The girl's small face was pale from the cold, and she clung tightly to the man's coat. Something in that image broke through Tia's fear. She remembered what it felt like to be helpless. She unlocked the door and opened it slowly. The man looked relieved. "I'm sorry to bother you," he said again. "We just need to dry off and wait until morning. I'll pay if I have to." Tia shook her head. "No, it's okay. Come in before you both catch a cold." They stepped inside, dripping water onto the floor. The man thanked her quietly, and the little girl whispered a shy thank you too. Tia hurried to get them towels and an old blanket from the shelf. She handed one to the man and wrapped another around the girl. "You poor thing," she said softly. "Sit by the stove. It's warmer there." The girl smiled weakly, her teeth chattering. "Thank you, ma'am," Tia smiled back. "You can just call me Tia." The man introduced himself as Mr. Lewis, and his daughter's name was Annie. He looked like someone who wasn't used to asking for help. His clothes were simple but of good quality, now soaked through. His hands were steady, but there was something about his eyes, something tired, almost heavy with worry. Tia didn't ask too many questions. She just poured some warm water into a pot and offered them tea. As they sat near the stove, steam rising from their cups, Tia tried to make small talk. "Where were you headed in this weather?" Mr. Lewis sighed. "We were on our way to visit my cousin out of town. Didn't expect the car to break down in the middle of nowhere. The rain caught us off guard." Tia nodded. "Yeah, it's been like this all week. Roads around here flood easily." For a moment there was silence except for the rain outside and the faint crackle of the stove. Annie leaned against her father's shoulder, half asleep. Tia noticed how gently he placed a hand over his daughter's head. It reminded her of how her own father used to be before life changed everything. "Would you like some soup?" Tia asked suddenly. "It's not much, but it's warm." "You've already done more than enough," the man said. "I don't want to trouble you." "It's no trouble," she replied quickly. "I can't let a child go to bed hungry." She reheated the leftover soup from dinner, mostly vegetables and broth, and poured it into 2 chipped bowls. She placed them on the small table and handed one to each of her guests. Annie's eyes lit up when she tasted it. "It's really good," she said between bites. Tia smiled. "Glad you like it." As they ate, Tia learned a little more about them. Mr. Lewis said they'd been traveling for a few days, staying in small towns. Annie missed her mother, who had passed away a year ago. Tia didn't ask about it, but she could see the sadness in both their faces when the topic came up. She didn't push. She knew what loss looked like. After dinner, Tia showed them to her small bedroom. "You both can sleep here tonight," she said. "It's the warmest room in the house." Mr. Lewis shook his head. "We can't take your bed. We'll be fine on the couch," but Tia insisted. "My brother and I can share the couch." "It's fine. You need rest," he finally agreed, though reluctantly. Before going to sleep, he thanked her again. "Not many people would open their door to strangers in the middle of the night," he said quietly. Tia shrugged. "Maybe not. But I know what it feels like to need help and not have anyone there. If I can help someone else, I will." He looked at her for a moment, then nodded. You're a kind person, Tia. The world needs more like you. When the lights went out, Tia lay on the couch with her brother, listening to the steady rhythm of the rain. She wondered who those people really were. Something about them seemed different, especially the man. He didn't talk much about himself, and his manner felt polished somehow. But she pushed the thought aside. It didn't matter. They were just travelers who needed help, and she was glad to give it. The next morning, sunlight streamed weakly through the cracked window. Tia woke early to make breakfast. Scrambled eggs and a few slices of toast. She only had a little butter left, but she spread it thinly so everyone could have some. When Mr. Lewis and Annie came out, they looked rested but embarrassed. You didn't have to cook for us, he said. I was making breakfast anyway, Tia replied with a smile. You might as well eat before you go. They sat together, and for a few moments it almost felt like a real family breakfast. Annie giggled at something Tia's brother said. And for a moment even Mr. Lewis smiled fully, a smile that reached his eyes. Tia couldn't help but notice how warm and genuine it looked. When it was time to leave, Mr. Lewis reached into his wallet. Please, he said, let me give you something for your kindness. Tia quickly shook her head. No, I didn't help you for money. But you gave us food, shelter, and you'd do the same for someone else, she interrupted gently. That's all I ask. For a moment, he just looked at her as if searching for the right words. Finally, he nodded. You're a good person, Tia. I won't forget this. He lifted Annie into the car after it had been repaired by a mechanic from town. The little girl waved from the window. Bye, Miss Tia. Thank you. Tia waved back, smiling. Take care, sweetheart. As the car disappeared down the road, she stood on the porch for a long time, watching the dust rise in the distance. Something about that encounter stayed with her. She didn't know why, but she had a feeling it wasn't the last time she'd see them. Later that day, she went back to work at the diner. The same faces came and went, the same orders repeated, the same noise of clattering plates and laughter. Life went on as usual. But every now and then, she caught herself thinking about the man and his little girl, the strangers who had knocked on her door that stormy night. There was a strange comfort in remembering their smiles. That night, as she sat on the porch with a cup of tea, her brother came outside and asked, Do you think they're okay now? Tia nodded slowly. Yeah, I think so. He seemed like someone who takes care of his own. Her brother leaned against her shoulder. You always help people. One day someone will help you too. She smiled at his words but didn't say anything. Deep down, she didn't expect much from the world. She had learned to rely on herself, to survive quietly without waiting for miracles. Still, as she looked up at the stars slowly peeking through the clouds, she allowed herself one small hope, that kindness, no matter how small, always found its way back. The night air was cool, carrying the smell of wet earth and distant rain. Tia closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Maybe things wouldn't always be this hard. Maybe, just maybe, life still had something good waiting for her. And somewhere not too far away, in a house much bigger than hers, Mr. Lewis sat by a window, holding a cup of coffee. His daughter was asleep upstairs, her favorite blanket tucked under her chin. He couldn't stop thinking about the young woman who had opened her door to them without hesitation. He had met many people in his life, wealthy ones, powerful ones, but very few with a heart as pure as hers. He smiled to himself and whispered, We'll see her again someday. The week after that rainy night passed slowly for Tia. Life returned to its usual rhythm. Long hours at the diner, little sleep and constant worry about money. She often thought about the man and his daughter. She didn't even know where they were from, but sometimes when she wiped down tables or served customers, she would picture the little girl's shy smile and wonder if they ever made it safely to their destination. Her co-workers at the diner were kind enough, but most of them were just as tired as she was. Every day felt the same. The same greasy smell from the kitchen, the same sound of the bell above the door, the same customers complaining about coffee being too cold or too strong. But Tia never complained. She had learned a long time ago that kindness and patience were worth more than words. Every evening, she would walk home with her brother, holding his hand tightly as the streetlights flickered on. They would talk about school, dreams, and sometimes about their parents. Their mother had passed away years ago, and their father had left soon after, unable to handle the pressure of raising two kids alone. Since then, it had always been Tia and her brother against the world. One Friday night after an especially long shift, Tia sat alone in the diner after closing. The rain was falling again, soft but steady. She was counting her tips, barely enough for groceries. Her boss, a heavy-set man with kind eyes, walked up to her. "You did good today," he said. "Double shifts aren't easy. You should get some rest." Tia smiled tiredly. "I'll be fine. I just need a few more hours next week if possible." He nodded. "I'll see what I can do." After he left, Tia wiped down the counter one last time before heading out into the cool night. The street was quiet. She walked home under her old umbrella, her shoes splashing through puddles. By the time she reached her little house, her brother was already asleep. She tucked him in, made herself a cup of tea, and sat by the window. The light rain reminded her of that night again. The knock on the door, the strangers, the warmth she felt when they left. It was strange how a small act of kindness could stay in your heart for so long. She didn't know why she couldn't stop thinking about it. Maybe because it made her feel like she had done something that mattered, even if just for one night. Days turned into weeks. The diner stayed busy. One afternoon, a man came in wearing a suit that looked far too fancy for the place. Tia noticed him the moment he walked through the door. He sat quietly in the corner booth and ordered black coffee. She served him with her usual polite smile and went about her work. But when she brought him the check, he looked up at her with curious eyes. "You're Tia, right?" he asked. She paused. "Yes, I am." "Have we met?" He smiled slightly. "You probably don't remember me, but my boss does." "Your boss?" she repeated, confused. "Yes. He told me to find you and tell you thank you again for helping him and his daughter that night." Tia blinked, surprised. "Oh, Mr. Lewis? How are they?" "They're doing well," the man replied. "He's been talking about you ever since. Said you reminded him that there's still good people left in the world." Her cheeks warmed. "I didn't do anything special. They just needed a place to stay." The man smiled again, this time kindly. "That's what makes it special. He said he'll be back in town soon and would like to see you." Tia didn't know what to say. She just nodded and watched as the man left. She felt a small flutter in her chest, a strange mix of curiosity and nervousness. Why would someone like him want to see her again? A few weeks later it happened. It was a quiet afternoon and the diner wasn't too crowded. Tia was wiping tables when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "I hope you still make that good coffee." She turned around and there he was. Mr. Lewis stood at the door, dressed neatly, his smile gentle but confident. And next to him was little Annie, holding his hand and grinning from ear to ear. Tia's eyes widened. "You, I can't believe this," Mr. Lewis laughed softly. "We wanted to stop by and see you. I owed you a thank you that night, but I didn't get the chance." Tia smiled, trying to hide how flustered she felt. "You already thanked me. Twice, actually," he chuckled. "Then maybe this makes 3 times." They sat at one of the booths and Tia brought them both pie and coffee. Annie told her all about her new school and how she had made friends. Tia listened, genuinely happy to see the little girl doing well. After a while, Mr. Lewis leaned forward, resting his hands on the table. "Tia, I didn't tell you the whole truth that night. I didn't want to. I needed a break from my world, from the noise, the people, the business. So I took a small trip with my daughter. Just us. That's when the car broke down near your place." Tia nodded slowly. "You don't owe me an explanation. I'm just glad you both were okay," he smiled. "That's the thing. You didn't ask questions. You didn't judge. You just helped. I've met many people in my life, but not many like you." Tia didn't know what to say. Compliments like that made her shy. She looked down at her hands and mumbled, "I only did what anyone else would do." "Not everyone would," he said softly. "And that's why I want to do something for you." She looked up quickly. "You don't have to." He raised a hand, stopping her gently. "Just hear me out. I own this diner chain. All of them, actually. I came here today to offer you something better. A job at our main office. You have the heart, the patience, and the honesty that I wish more people had. We'll train you and I'll personally make sure you're taken care of." Tia froze. For a moment she thought she had misheard him. You own this place?" He nodded, smiling. "Yes, I bought it a few years ago. I built this business from scratch, and now I'd like to give someone like you a real chance." She shook her head slowly. "I don't think I can. I'm not qualified for something like that." He smiled again, calm and patient. "You're more qualified than you think. You care about people, and that's something you can't teach. Everything else you can learn. Tia felt her chest tighten. She had dreamed of a better job so many times, but dreams like that always felt too far away. She thought about her brother, about their small home, about all the time she had stayed up late worrying about bills. What if this was her chance to finally change their lives? But still, she hesitated. I don't want to accept something I didn't earn, she whispered. Mr. Lewis looked at her kindly. You already earned it, Tia. The night you opened your door to strangers without expecting anything back. That was the moment you earned it. Annie tugged at Tia's sleeve and said softly, Please say yes, Miss Tia. I want to see you again. Tia couldn't help but laugh a little. The sound of it made the whole moment lighter. She finally looked back at Mr. Lewis and said, If you're serious about it, then yes, I'll try. His smile widened. Good. I'll have my assistant contact you tomorrow. You'll start next week. She nodded slowly, still processing everything. Thank you, she said quietly. When they left, Tia stood by the window and watched their car drive away. It didn't feel real. The same man who had stood at her door in the pouring rain now offered her a future she never thought she'd have. That night, she sat on the porch, her brother beside her, the stars faint above the city lights. She told him everything. He looked at her with wide eyes, full of excitement. So you're gonna work in an office now? Like a real office? She laughed. I guess so, he grinned. See? I told you good things come back. Tia looked out into the dark, her heart full but calm. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to believe that maybe the world did notice the quiet, kind people. The ones who gave without asking. Who shared even when they had little, and somewhere across town, in a tall glass building that overlooked the city, Mr. Lewis sat in his office looking at a photo of his daughter. He thought about the woman who had helped them without knowing who he was. He smiled to himself. Sometimes, he whispered, the richest hearts are found in the smallest homes. The following week moved faster than Tia expected. One morning, a car came to pick her up for her first day at the company. It was strange sitting in the back seat of such a clean, quiet car, wearing the only nice dress she owned. Her brother had helped her iron it the night before, and before she left, he gave her a small hug and said, You're gonna do great. As the car drove through the city, she stared out the window, feeling both nervous and excited. The buildings grew taller, the streets busier. She had never been to this part of town before. When they finally stopped in front of a tall glass building with shining windows, she took a deep breath. The driver smiled and opened the door for her. Welcome, miss, he said kindly. Inside, the office was bright and full of people moving quickly. The smell of coffee filled the air. Everyone seemed busy, typing, talking, and walking with purpose. Tia felt out of place, holding her small purse tightly. But then she saw a familiar face, Mr. Lewis standing by the reception desk. He waved at her with a smile. Tia, you made it, he said warmly. I did, she said, her voice shaking slightly. It's all so big, he laughed gently. You'll get used to it. Come, I'll show you around. He walked her through the hallways, introducing her to people and showing her the departments. Everyone greeted him respectfully, calling him sir. Tia could see how different he looked here. Confident, in control, but still the same kind man she had met on that rainy night. Finally, he led her to a small desk near the window. This will be your spot, he said. You'll be helping our operations team. Mostly paperwork and organizing schedules for now. Don't worry, I will train you, she nodded. Thank you for this chance, he smiled. You earned it. And remember, no one expects you to know everything right away. Just be yourself. That first day felt long but fulfilling. A woman named Clara was assigned to train her. Clara was patient and friendly, explaining how to file reports, answer emails, and handle calls. At first, the computer confused Tia. She wasn't used to office software, but Clara showed her step by step. By lunchtime, she was already feeling a little more confident. At the cafeteria, she sat alone with her tray, quietly eating her sandwich. She didn't want to bother anyone. But then a few coworkers joined her, asking polite questions. So you're the new assistant? One asked. You must have impressed the boss. He doesn't bring just anyone in. Tia smiled shyly. I guess I was just in the right place at the right time. They laughed softly, and for the first time in a long while, she felt like she belonged somewhere. Days turned into weeks, and Tia started to enjoy her new routine. She woke early, took the bus to the office, worked with focus, and went home tired but proud. Her brother noticed the difference in her. She smiled more now. She had even started saving money, something she hadn't been able to do before. One evening, Mr. Lewis stopped by her desk before leaving. "You're doing great," he said. "I can tell you've been working hard." "Thank you," she replied, looking up from her papers. "I'm still learning," he smiled. "We're all learning, Tia, even me." That small sentence stayed with her. She admired how humble he was despite being so successful. He always treated his employees with respect. People spoke highly of him, saying he built the company from nothing, just like she was trying to build her life. A few days later, he invited her to lunch with him and Annie. "It's been a while since we all ate together," he said. They met at a quiet restaurant outside the city. Annie ran up and hugged Tia as soon as she saw her. "I missed you, Miss Tia." Tia laughed, hugging her back. "I missed you too, little one." Over lunch, Annie talked non-stop about school while Mr. Lewis listened with a proud smile. Tia watched them both and felt warmth in her chest. She didn't have much family, but moments like this made her feel like she was part of something again. After lunch, Mr. Lewis asked, "How are things at home?" Tia shrugged lightly. "Better. I can pay the bills on time now. My brother's doing well in school. I'm just grateful," he nodded slowly. "Good. You deserve it." Before they left, Annie gave Tia a small drawing she had made, a picture of 3 people standing under a rainbow. "That's you, me, and Daddy," she explained. "Because we're friends." Tia's eyes softened. "It's beautiful, Annie, thank you." She put the drawing carefully in her bag. That little piece of paper would become something she'd treasure for years. Work continued to go well. She became more confident with each passing day. Her co-workers respected her, and even Clara joked that Tia was catching up faster than anyone she'd trained before. But not everything was easy. There were moments when she doubted herself, times when she made small mistakes or felt overwhelmed by tasks she didn't fully understand. One afternoon, she accidentally sent a report to the wrong department and spent hours fixing it. She was almost in tears by the time she finished. When Mr. Lewis found out, he didn't scold her. Instead, he smiled and said, "Don't be too hard on yourself. Mistakes are proof that you're trying." Those words gave her strength. She realized he wasn't just a boss, he was someone who genuinely cared. Weeks later, the company held an event, a formal dinner to celebrate a big business milestone. Everyone was dressed beautifully. Tia wore a simple blue dress she had borrowed from Clara. She felt nervous walking into the grand hall filled with polished tables, laughter, and soft music. When Mr. Lewis saw her, he smiled warmly. "You look wonderful, Tia. I'm glad you came." "Thank you," she said shyly. "I almost didn't. I don't usually go to fancy things like this." He laughed softly. "Well, get used to it. You're part of the team now." As the evening went on, Tia found herself talking to people she never thought she'd meet. Managers, partners, even clients. Everyone seemed impressed by how genuine she was. One woman said, "You have a very calming presence. No wonder the boss speaks so highly of you." Tia blushed. "He does?" The woman nodded. "He says you remind him that kindness still matters in business." That night, as the event ended, Mr. Lewis approached her once more. "You handled yourself well tonight," he said. "You've come a long way from that rainy night," she smiled softly. "Feels like a lifetime ago." He looked at her thoughtfully. "Sometimes the smallest moments change everything." "I'm glad you opened that door." Her heart warmed at his words. She realized then that her life had truly turned a corner. Back home, her brother waited up for her, eager to hear about the event. "Was it fancy?" he asked excitedly. "Very," she said, laughing. "But you know what? I didn't feel out of place." "Not anymore," he smiled proudly. "I knew you'd fit right in." As she got ready for bed, Tia took out the drawing Annie had given her and placed it on her nightstand. She looked at it and whispered softly, "Thank you." The following morning, she woke up early, ready to face another day. The world hadn't suddenly become perfect, and she still had struggles, and life was far from easy. But for the first time, she felt hope in her heart every single morning. Weeks turned into months. Tia's work improved so much that Mr. Lewis promoted her to a higher position. She now managed small projects, helped train new assistants, and was trusted with responsibilities she once thought were out of her reach. Every success, no matter how small, reminded her of how far she had come. Sometimes, when she sat by the window in her office, she would think about the night everything changed. The rain, the knock, the strangers. What if she had ignored it? What if she hadn't opened that door? Life would have stayed the same, hard, quiet, and uncertain. But because she chose kindness, her whole world had shifted. One evening, as she was leaving work, Mr. Lewis called out to her. "Tia, do you have a minute?" She turned. "Of course," he smiled. "I just wanted to say, I'm proud of you. You've grown so much. You've earned everything that's come your way." Her throat tightened slightly. "Thank you. But I couldn't have done it without you." He shook his head. "No, Tia, you did this. You believed in people even when life gave you reasons not to. That's what makes you special." As she walked out into the cool evening air, she felt the wind brush against her face and the faint smell of rain in the distance. The sky was dark, but instead of fear, she felt peace. The road had been long and it still stretched ahead of her, but now she wasn't afraid of where it led. She had learned that even the smallest acts of kindness could change lives in ways no one could predict. And deep down, she knew one simple truth. The night she opened her door to strangers was the night her whole life began to open too. When Tia walked into work the next day, she still couldn't believe what had happened the day before. She kept replaying the moment when Mr. Lewis had shown up at the diner in that fancy car. The way everyone respected him, the way people rushed to greet him, it was still unreal to her. All this time, the man she had helped one stormy night wasn't just any ordinary traveler. He was the owner of the very diner where she worked every single day. The thought made her both nervous and curious. Why had he come back? What did he really want from her? Maybe he was just being polite. Maybe he felt guilty for not telling her who he was earlier. She tried not to think too much about it, but her heart kept beating faster every time she remembered his words. "I've been looking for you." That afternoon, when her shift ended, she stepped outside and found Mr. Lewis waiting by his car again. He smiled when he saw her, a gentle, calm smile that made her less afraid. "Tia," he said warmly, "I was hoping we could talk for a few minutes. Maybe over coffee?" She hesitated for a moment, unsure if she should. But something about his tone told her it was important. "All right," she said quietly, nodding. They went to a small cafe across the street. He didn't bring any of his business people with him this time, just himself. He ordered 2 coffees and waited until the waiter walked away before speaking again. "I owe you an explanation," he said. "And I owe you a thank you." Tia looked down, feeling awkward. "You don't owe me anything," she replied softly. "You and your daughter were stranded. I just did what anyone would do." He shook his head gently. "No, not everyone would have done that. You didn't know who I was. You didn't ask for anything in return. You gave us warmth, food, and safety when you barely had enough for yourself. That kind of kindness. It's rare." She didn't know how to respond. Compliments made her uncomfortable, especially when they came from people like him. People who had everything. She sipped her coffee and stayed quiet. Mr. Lewis looked at her kindly, then continued. "The truth is, that night wasn't random. I was traveling with my daughter to get away from everything for a while. My wife passed away last year and life became too heavy. The business, the media, the pressure, it was all too much. I just wanted a few quiet days with my little girl. We didn't plan to end up in your neighborhood, but maybe we were meant to." Tia's heart softened at his words. She remembered the sadness she had seen in his eyes that night, though she hadn't known why. Now it made sense. "I'm sorry," she said gently. "Losing someone you love. That's never easy." He nodded slowly. "Thank you. It's been hard, especially for Annie. But that night when she met you, when she saw how kind you were even though you didn't have much, it reminded her that the world still has good people." You made her smile for the first time in months. Hearing that made Tia's eyes sting. She hadn't done anything special, at least not in her mind, but to think her small act had touched someone that deeply, it felt humbling. Then he leaned forward slightly. "Tia, I've been thinking about you a lot since that night. I saw the way you worked here, how respectful and honest you were with every customer. I saw how you carried yourself with quiet strength even when things weren't easy. That's why I came back. I want to make you an offer." Tia blinked in surprise. "An offer?" "Yes," he said. "I want to give you a chance to work with me. Not at the diner, but at my company's main office. It's a different kind of job. You'd get proper training, a better salary, and a stable future. You've already proven that you have the heart and determination that money can't buy." She froze, unsure what to say. It sounded too good to be true. You mean, me? Work at your company? He smiled. Yes, you. I know it sounds sudden, but I mean it. You deserve a chance to build something better for yourself and your brother. I can see you have potential. Tia felt her throat tighten. She didn't know whether to cry or laugh. But I don't know anything about offices or computers or those kinds of jobs, she said nervously. I've only worked in diners and grocery stores. I'm not qualified. Mr. Lewis shook his head. Skills can be taught. Character can't, and you already have what matters most. I'll make sure you get the training you need. All I ask is that you try. Tia couldn't hold back her tears anymore. For years, she had struggled to find a break, just one small chance to change her life. And now it was right in front of her. Why me? She whispered. You could help anyone. Why choose me? He looked at her for a moment before replying. Because you helped me when I was nobody. And I believe that kindness should never go unnoticed. The silence that followed was soft but powerful. For the first time in a long time, Tia felt seen. Not for what she didn't have, but for who she truly was. After a long pause, she nodded slowly. Okay, she said quietly. I'll do it. I'll try. Mr. Lewis smiled. Good. You won't regret it. He handed her a small card with his company's logo and personal number. Come by the office tomorrow. I'll have my assistant show you around. We'll start with some basic training and go from there. Tia held the card carefully like it was something precious. When she went home that night, her brother noticed the way she was smiling, something he hadn't seen in a while. What happened, Tia? He asked curiously. She hugged him tightly. Something good, she said, tears in her eyes. Something really good. That night she couldn't sleep. Her mind kept racing, filled with fear and hope. What if she wasn't good enough? What if she made a mistake? But deep down she knew she had to try. She had worked hard all her life, and maybe, just maybe, it was finally time for things to get better. The next morning she wore her cleanest clothes and took the bus downtown. When she walked into the tall glass building, she felt small but determined. The receptionist greeted her politely and called Mr. Lewis's assistant, who came to meet her right away. Everyone treated her kindly, but she could feel the difference. She didn't belong there yet. Still, she kept her head high and listened carefully as they showed her around the office. The environment was completely new to her. Computers, meetings, phones ringing everywhere. But she paid attention to everything. Later, Mr. Lewis came by to check on her. How's your first day going? He asked. She smiled nervously. It's a lot to learn, but I'm trying. That's all I ask, he said. Keep trying. You'll do great. As the days turned into weeks, Tia worked harder than anyone. She stayed late to learn new things, took notes during every training session, and never once complained. The office staff began to notice her dedication. Even the managers admired her positive attitude. One afternoon, Mr. Lewis called her into his office. She thought she had done something wrong, but instead he smiled proudly. I wanted to tell you that you're doing an amazing job, he said. You've learned faster than anyone expected. Tia felt her cheeks warm. Thank you, she said shyly. I'm just grateful to be here, he nodded. You earned it, Tia. Remember that. She left his office feeling like her life was finally changing. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was just surviving. She was actually living. She started saving money, paying off old bills, and planning for her brother's future. One evening, as she was about to leave work, Annie ran into the office. The little girl was carrying a drawing, Tia and her standing together under a rainbow. This is for you, she said with a big grin. Tia knelt down, smiling. It's beautiful. Thank you. Annie hugged her tightly. Daddy says you're part of our family now, she whispered. Tia's heart melted. She hugged the girl back, feeling an emotion she hadn't felt in years, belonging. As she walked home that night, holding the drawing in her hands, she thought about how strange life could be. A simple act of kindness had opened a door she never even knew existed. She didn't have much, but she had always given what she could. And somehow the world had given it back to her, multiplied. For once, she allowed herself to dream. Maybe this was just the beginning. Maybe there was more waiting ahead, more hope, more peace, more love. Whatever it was, she knew one thing for sure. That one rainy night when she opened her door to two strangers, she hadn't just helped them. She had helped herself find a new path in life. And no matter where that path led, she would walk it with the same heart that had brought her this far. Months had passed since Tia had started working at Mr. Lewis's company. Her life looked nothing like it used to. The small, broken-down house she once called home was now replaced with a cozy apartment in a safe neighborhood. The air smelled cleaner, the streets were quieter, and for the first time she woke up without the sound of leaky pipes or shouting neighbors. Every morning she would make breakfast for her little brother before heading to work, her heart full of quiet gratitude. But even with all the changes, she never forgot where she came from. Every day she reminded herself that this new life wasn't a miracle. It was the result of a small act of kindness that came from her heart on that rainy night. At the office, she had grown confident. The shy, nervous girl who once doubted herself was gone. In her place stood a young woman who knew her worth. She learned how to manage meetings, write reports, and handle projects. Her co-workers respected her. Mr. Lewis often called her into his office not just for work, but to check how she was doing personally. It felt strange at first, being treated like family by someone so important, but she grew used to it. One day after work, Mr. Lewis asked her to stay behind for a few minutes. She sat across from him as he poured 2 cups of tea, something he often did when he wanted to talk about something meaningful. "Tia," he said with a smile, "do you ever think about that night? The one when we first met?" She laughed softly. "I think about it all the time. Sometimes it feels like a dream." He nodded. "It changed my life too, you know. That night I was lost. I'd lost faith in people. I thought money could fix everything, but it couldn't fix the pain of losing someone you love. Then you came along, someone who had almost nothing but still gave without expecting anything. It made me realize how wrong I was about the world." His words touched her deeply. She stayed silent, letting the moment speak for itself. He continued, "You didn't just help a stranger that night. You helped a father who was trying to find hope again, and because of that I'll always be grateful to you." Tia smiled, her eyes misty. "I just did what felt right. I didn't think it would change anything." He looked at her kindly. "Sometimes doing the right thing doesn't change the world, but it changes someone's world. That's what you did." She looked down, blinking away tears. Moments like these reminded her why life was worth fighting for. A few weeks later, the company announced an upcoming charity event, a program to support young people from poor neighborhoods, giving them job training and opportunities just like the one Tia had been given. When she heard about it, her heart skipped a beat. Mr. Lewis had told her privately that he wanted her to be part of it, not as a helper, but as one of the speakers. At first, she was terrified. "I'm not good at speeches," she said. "People will just think I'm lucky." He smiled. "You're not lucky, Tia, you're brave, and that's what they need to hear." The night of the event arrived. The ballroom was filled with people, company workers, guests, journalists, and young men and women who came from difficult backgrounds, just like she once did. Tia stood backstage, her hands shaking slightly. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of everything she'd been through. The long nights at the diner, the broken roof that used to leak when it rained, her brother's hungry face when they didn't have enough to eat. And then she remembered that knock on the door, the man and his daughter standing in the rain. When her name was called, she walked onto the stage. The lights were bright, and for a moment she couldn't see anyone. Then, as her eyes adjusted, she saw faces, people listening, waiting. She smiled nervously and began to speak. "A year ago," she started softly, "I was working at a small diner. I was living in a place that barely kept the rain out. I didn't have much, but I tried to stay kind. One night, a man and his little girl came to my door asking for help. They were cold, tired, and had nowhere to go. I let them in. I didn't know who they were, and I didn't do it for a reward. I just thought, if it were me, I'd want someone to open the door too." The room was silent. You could hear the emotion in her voice. She continued, "That night changed my life. I didn't know that the man I helped was a soul." "Kindness doesn't cost anything," she said. "You never know how one small thing you do for someone can change both your lives." "I'm living proof of that." The audience began to clap, slowly at first, then louder. Tia felt a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving, she was inspiring others. After the event, people came up to her, thanking her for her story. Some had tears in their eyes. Mr. Lewis walked over, his daughter holding his hand. The little girl smiled up at Tia and handed her a small flower she had picked earlier. "For you," she said sweetly. Tia knelt down and hugged her. "Thank you, sweetheart." Mr. Lewis put a hand on her shoulder. "You were incredible," he said. "You spoke from the heart," Tia smiled. "I just told the truth," he nodded proudly. And that's why it mattered. As the months went on, the charity program grew. Dozens of young people from struggling neighborhoods got jobs, training, and support because of it. Tia helped organize workshops and even mentored a few of the new trainees herself. Every time she saw one of them succeed, it filled her with quiet pride. Her brother, now in high school, often told her how proud he was. "You're my hero, Tia," he'd say, hugging her after dinner. She'd smile and laugh, pretending not to cry. Sometimes, when she sat alone at night, she would think about how far she'd come. She had once been the girl who gave away her last bowl of soup to strangers. Now she was the woman helping others build new lives. But deep inside, she hadn't changed much. She was still the same Tia, still humble, still grateful, still believing in the power of doing good. One evening, as she was leaving work, Mr. Lewis called out from behind her. "Tia," she turned and smiled. "Yes?" He walked up beside her. "You know, I was thinking, it's been exactly 1 year since that night." She nodded slowly. "It feels like yesterday." He looked at her thoughtfully. "You've become like family to me and Annie. I don't say that lightly. You've given us hope, and in return I hope we've given you the future you deserve." She smiled softly. "You gave me more than that. You reminded me that good people still exist." He chuckled gently. "Funny, you said the same thing to me once." They both laughed quietly, standing under the soft glow of the streetlights. "Thank you for opening that door, Tia," he said. "You didn't just let us in, you let a new chapter begin." Her eyes filled with tears. "And thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself." They stood there for a moment. Two people whose lives had been forever changed by a simple act of compassion. That night, when Tia went home, she sat by her window looking out at the city lights. Her brother was asleep in the next room. She could hear the quiet hum of traffic below and feel the calm of a life finally at peace. She picked up the small flower Annie had given her earlier and placed it in a cup of water. It wasn't just a flower, it was a reminder that no matter how dark life gets, kindness can light the way. Tia smiled to herself and whispered softly, "Everything starts with one small choice." And somewhere, deep inside, she knew that was true, because she had lived it.